Hey TLC, my name's Alice and along with my husband Josh, we have the privilege of leading the TLC City Campus. Today I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you from the book of 1 Samuel as I've been reading it again in my personal devotions. This is just from the very first chapter and we're going to be looking primarily at the character of Hannah. Now Hannah was a woman who was unable to have children at this point in the story. And the story is all about her sadness, her prayer to God, and eventually we see God's faithfulness. So let me read to you, this is 1 Samuel chapter 1 from verse 9. Once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord, and she made this vow. O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut. As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. And it goes on, I've been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. In that case, Eli said, go in peace. May the God of Israel grant you the request you've asked of him. Oh, thank you, sir, she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. The entire family got up early the next morning and went to worship the Lord once more. Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her plea. And in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I have asked the Lord for him. And then from verse 24 it says, when the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle at Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice and a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I'm giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord for his whole life. And they worshipped the Lord there. 4 things I'd love us to take from this passage today that I've been reminded and encouraged by just as I've read it again. Firstly, in her pain, she prayed. Hannah felt great pain. She compared her life to those around her and she felt that she was missing something, that she felt sorrow and she felt pain. She felt that she was lacking and she had loss where others had life. But instead of letting that drive her away from God, she allowed her pain to drive her towards God. She took her pain to God. Now, do you find that when you feel pain, whatever that might be, that you allow it to drive you to or from God? You know, our God is strong enough to take our sadness and our questions and our sorrow and our pain. He doesn't need us to put on a brave face for him. He just longs for us to come to him honestly and to pour out our hearts to him. I want to encourage you today, whatever pain that you're facing, pray. Secondly, she made a big promise, but she did as she promised. It says she made this vow, if you will, then I will. She asked God for the greatest desire of her heart. And then her promise was that she would give this back to him, that she would give this promise back to God. And it almost seems obscene, really, that the very thing that she longed for, she was willing to give up again. But when I look at my life, what is it that I'm asking God for? And am I willing to give my most prized possession back to him, to honor him? When I make a promise to God, am I as faithful to keep my promise as he is to keep his promise? And do I understand that all I have from God, everything I have, is from God? And so why would I not want to give it all back to honor him? With my money, with my gifts, with my time, even my family, am I willing to dedicate and give everything to honor God? Thirdly, she was faithful in the waiting. So it says that in due time, she gave birth to a son. Now we don't know, maybe that was straight away, but maybe there was a period of waiting that she had to have. We don't know how long due time was. And when we read that she goes to see Eli, we know it was several years later. But she may have seen God answer her prayer immediately, or she may have had a season of waiting. But did she forget her promise to God? No, she was faithful to her promise, and she was faithful in the waiting. Am I faithful in the waiting? Am I expecting an immediate answer from God? Or am I willing to trust that he knows the due time for his promise? I want to challenge you, as this has really challenged me, that whatever season you're in, don't watch the clock. Whether you're in a season of waiting or whether everything seems like it's rushing around you, let's be faithful in the season we're in. Let's be faithful in the waiting, because in due time, he will always be faithful. And fourthly, she honoured the answer. We finally see that Hannah honoured the answer to prayer through what she named her son. She acknowledged that God had been faithful to his promise when she named her son Samuel, saying, I asked the Lord for him. She gave him the credit. She gave Samuel back to God to serve in the temple for his whole life, and by doing so, she honoured the answer to prayer. In my life, am I quick to testify of God's faithfulness? When God provides for me, do I by default give God glory, or by default do I draw the glory to myself? When God fulfills his promise, let's never be quiet in our testimony of his faithfulness and his goodness. You know, when I look at my own life, I can see that our son, Levi Samuel, is a testimony of God's faithfulness. Levi means joined to. We believe he's going to be joined to Jesus for his whole life. And of course, Samuel, as we've just read about, a man who served in the house of the Lord for his whole life. His name means I asked the Lord for him. We believe that God was faithful to us in giving us Levi Samuel in due time, that at just the right time he knew. And we celebrate his faithfulness by what we named him. We honour God for his answer to prayer through what we named Levi. But also we honour him and we celebrate his faithful as loud and as often as we can, because God has always been good to us and he has always been faithful and he always will be. So let's learn from this great chapter, this first chapter of 1 Samuel and the life of Hannah, that in our pain, pray. Secondly, that we can do as we promise. Let's be faithful. Let's be men and women of our word. Thirdly, be faithful in the waiting. Whatever season you're in, don't watch the clock, but be faithful in the now. And fourthly, let's honour his answer. When he answers our prayers, let's be loud in testimony of his faithfulness. Let's celebrate the goodness of God in our lives. Be blessed, TLC.
Hello everyone, I'm Richard. I'm married to the amazing Sue, and we have two wonderful children, stroke adults, Hannah and David. Now, in my devotions, I've been going through the Bible in 1 and a bit years, and I just completed the book of Joshua, which is such an exciting book. Moses had died, Joshua is now leading the people of Israel, and they're finally going to cross the Jordan River into the promised land after wandering around in the wilderness for the last 40 years, ready to take Jericho and all the other cities and the land that God promised for generations before that would be theirs. Now, the book starts with some well-known and really relevant verses that can encourage us at this time. Be strong and very courageous. It says in chapter 1, verse 7, I'll give you every place where you set your foot. Chapter 1, verse 3. Don't be afraid, don't be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Chapter 1, verse 9. And then when they're about to cross the Jordan, they're told to follow the ark, the very presence of God. And it says in chapter 3, verse 4, then you will know which way to go, since you've never been this way before. Well, that is certainly true for all of us. None of us have experienced anything like this before. So let's follow Jesus and pursue his presence. But the verse that really caught my attention was in chapter 5, verse 9. And this comes after God tells Joshua to circumcise all the men, because none of those who had been born in the wilderness had been circumcised. Now, this was just an outward act of their dedication and devotion to God. And it says in verse 9, then the Lord said to Joshua, today I rolled away your reproach of Egypt from you. So the place has been called Gilgal to this day. Now, Gilgal sounds like the Hebrew word for roll. Other versions say, "Today I've rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt." Well, they hadn't been slaves for the last 40 years, but nor had they entered the promised land until now, when they dedicated themselves back to God. I just love that phrase, rolled away. They had to, in effect, to let go, to put down the shame, the disgrace, the history of being slaves, the old mentality, and they had to pick up a new mantle, a new mindset, a new position, to be a new nation in the place where they were going. And the same can be true for us. Instead of disgrace, through Jesus, we drop the D-I-S and we receive grace. Because God says, "I have rolled away your reproach, your shame, the errors of your past, and your ongoing failures." Well, how can we be sure? Well, because God rolled away a stone to reveal an empty tomb where Jesus had been laid. Jesus was risen. And because that stone was rolled away, our failures, our shame, our mistakes have also been rolled away. But my question for us would be, what do we need to put down and what do we need to pick up? So over the last few months, there have been times when small things would irritate me, even get me really angry if they didn't go the way that I thought they should. And if we're honest, not many things have gone the way that we would have liked over the last 3 months. But for me, these were fairly insignificant things. And so I asked God what was going on, and he graciously pointed out that it was an issue of control. I certainly couldn't control the major issues of the world. And so it's these small things that were really getting to me. And so every time I felt frustration rise up, I needed to drop my desire to be in control. It's been rolled away. And instead, I needed to pick up trust. Trust him who is in control. And, just being aware of that has really helped me. So I'd like to encourage you in your devotions to ask God, are there any areas in your life, your thinking, your words, your attitudes to others, even how you see yourself, that you need to drop, you need to let go of, you need to let roll away? And what things do you need to pick up that are in line with God's will and his word? New attitudes, new mindset, a new way of thinking because of your position in Christ. At the end of the book of Joshua in chapter 24, God says, "I gave you a land on which you did not toil and cities you did not build, and you live in them and eat from their vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant." All the blessings that we inherit in being in Christ, we did not earn, we could not work for. They're all by grace. They're already done for us. There's an empty tomb. God has rolled away your reproach, your shame, your mistakes, your wrong attitudes and actions, and he will help you overcome where you still struggle if we're, first of all, honest with him and we're devoted to him. So I'd like to encourage you just to spend a moment and ask, what do you need to drop? He's rolled it away already. And what do you need to pick up? So be blessed, be strong, and very courageous.